Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery, and one system that you definitely don't expect to see down here in my wormery is, yep, that's right, it's the outdoor worm bag. And we finally decided to pull the trigger on bringing this system indoors, give it a break from the winter cold. So here it is. Over here you can still see remnants of the ice that had collected on the top of this system since it was just brought in from outdoors. And it's still kind of mild. I had talked about possibly only bringing the system indoors at some point when things in the forecast started to look really extreme. But there was also this other variable of us really wanting to see the composting activity in this system speed up a bit, because in the cold things will always tend to slow down. So really quick before we get all messed up here, let's check out some stats about the system. It's now 286 days of age, and I guess we have to sort of affix this concept of it having only been previously an outdoor system, since it's clearly not that anymore. It's version 5 of my outdoor system. Didn't always run in a bag. It was just sort of started as an overwinter test, ironically, and now we've turned it pretty much into an anti-winter situation here. So really quick, it's been almost 2 weeks, 13 days since our last check-in here, at which point we had given them feeding number 25. So feeding number 26 today, very, very similar, if not identical, to what they got last time. Coffee and worm chow. Pretty much dry stuff. And even though this is a fabric bag, and fabric bags are pretty much known for being great with airflow, since they're, a porous material that lets air pass through, but we sort of cheated here. I've got this piece of plastic running all the way around, or a few pieces of plastic, I guess they're just plastic bags, running around the whole system, giving the whole system a great deal more moisture retaining capability. And that's the reason we never come in here and find dry material on the edges. The dryness, no, I guess there's really not a lot of dryness. Perhaps right below the plywood out here along the edges would be the only place where the system gets a decent amount of steady airflow so that it can dry off. Everything else is interesting. Everything else is pretty well protected. So here we've got a little hunk of material. Gosh, this takes me back to a couple years ago when we sort of panicked when we encountered stuff like this, probably 2 or 3 times as thick, preventing us from even getting into the contents of the container. And we chipped our way in. At that point, I think that was one of the first times we sort of decided to begin transforming the outdoor worm system into an indoor worm system. So I'm going to just see how these leftovers, last week's feeding was, like I mentioned a moment ago, just tiny particle stuff with coffee and worm chow making up their feeding, and everything else that was placed into this feeding zone was just leftover bits of, I don't even remember, corn cob, pumpkin stem, who knows, all kinds of leftover foods from past feedings that we encountered along the way. We did a pretty thorough inspection of the material throughout the bag, collected up all the leftover remnants of food that we could find, and then just sort of consolidated all that uneaten material down into the feeding area. So every time I bump into a little chunk of something, I'm just curious to see what it is. A lot of times it just crumbles in my fingers, just like you saw there a moment ago. Alright, here's something that's not going to crumble. Half of a mango seed, cut right down the middle this way. A lot of times the other half shows up too. This would have definitely been one of those leftovers we encountered last time. That thing's been going for months and months. And I don't think we really need to excavate the feeding zone a whole lot more. The stuff we're putting in is pretty limited in size. So let's let these little guys settle down for a moment, and we'll get to feeding them. Alright, so I don't want to do anything really harsh or extreme, so as much as I like the idea of drying off the contents of this system, I'd rather do it kind of steadily, slowly. So I thought that perhaps a paper cover at the end would work well. So this thing's already folded perfectly, so that all I need to do is trim off some excess material, and then we've got ourselves a nice circularly shaped top covering piece of paper here. And the feeding I think would be nice to sort of sprinkle in sort of randomly and blend it in at this point. It's something we don't really do very often, but in this system it seems like perhaps a good idea. I'm not going to go out of my way to try to consolidate the leftovers that are in here. They're kind of all over the place at this point, and I'm not really looking to do a systematic search to track them all down. So let's just sort of mix in some stuff, and then we'll do another application and blending, and then maybe one last one as sort of a top coating. I guess I'm sort of treating the depletion of this little box here as my measure for how we're doing. My worm chow, this stuff, it's mainly pulverized pumpkin seeds and these weird noodles that are made out of vegetable matter instead of flour. Alright, I think we'll do one more tilling up and then topping off with some food for them. Put on a nice porous paper top covering, and then we'll take that wooden painted piece of plywood that typically rests on the top of the material here, and I think we'll just sort of pin it into the top here, sitting up above the paper, allowing for some airflow. While in the past we always used to be able to use it as sort of a top covering, which didn't allow for any airflow to go through it. Sometimes we would sort of cripple its functionality by not allowing it to sit right on top of the material in the bin, but rather have it sort of hovering above the surface, allowing for some airflow. So we're not really allowing for a great deal of airflow. What do we do with our feeding zone indicator? Let's just get it in here. Let them nibble on it if that's what they wish to do. It's theirs. And like I said, we're going to put this thing back on in such a way that it's not really resting on the surface of the material. It's kind of pinned up above it. And this is interesting how it's sort of just developed this little fold over here. The thing always managed to remain pretty rigid, but it's seen better days. You can even see over here it's cracking. So we'll try to get a little bit more use out of this, but I think this thing's history. But that's it for our check-in now with the outdoor, well, no longer outdoor, our previously outdoor worm bag, getting feeding number 26 on day 286. And at this point, I think the main objective is small-sized food items, allow for a little bit of drying. We'll see how that goes with this little minor change to allow for a little bit of moisture to escape. Hopefully that works for us. And we'll come back in here at some point in the near future. I've just got to find a place to put this thing, but I'll do that after the camera stops rolling. All right, everyone, that's it for the check-in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.